Hello. It happens to be good afternoon where I am, but if you should happen to see this in the morning, and some of you will, good morning, and also good evening if you should see it then. Welcome back to my name is Deanne D. Matthews. Welcome back to April reading number one of my newest book, Black, White, and Red All Over. So, I'm going to be doing a reading. Our themes this month in April, in recognition of Easter and also of April Fool's Day, are the Fools of Lofton County and inside Black, White, and Red all over, and with some thought given also to American style Christianity and the good, the bad, and the foolishness thereof. We'll be getting into all of it over the course of this month. Okay, let me do some housekeeping first. Coming up, you're going to see this on a Wednesday. In fact, Wednesday, April the 7th. Coming up on April the 12th, there will be a conversation that I had with Mr. H.T. Campbell of the Author's Corner. That'll be appearing next Monday. And on the 30th, he will be presenting his full review of this book. So look out for those. And again, big shout out to H.D. Campbell. That was a wonderful conversation. That was a lot of fun. And also just for just a quality experience. And thank you. I'm looking forward to see what he comes up with. Okay. Other housekeeping, if you would like a signed copy of this book, they are available through the end of April. And I may extend it a little bit further because Mr. Campbell is doing his review on the 30th. So at least until April 30th, maybe into May. We'll see what happens. But if you'd like a signed copy, they are available. They'll be dropped into first class mail and sent straight out to you. If you want an electronic copy, the Amazon will be in the link in the description. You'll be able to get this book on Kindle also. All right, enough housekeeping. We're going to get to our first fool of Black, White, and Red all over. Now, in our last time together on posted that Monday, we defined terms. Essentially, we looked at the dictionary definition. A fool is a silly person who is unwise or imprudent. This suggests that a fool is not someone who does not have the knowledge to know better, but in the presence of wisdom and prudence, he chooses to be silly. He chooses to do something totally different. He chooses to be unwise and imprudent. It's not that knowledge doesn't exist. We also compared this to the biblical definition of a fool. We also compared this to the idea of what this means in American history, given that all of the justifications in both science and religion for racism and therefore of treating everybody who's not a European as less than human have been debunked, meaning that all racists, in contravention to knowledge and wisdom that is available from the scripture through the human genome, are fools by definition. And so you may expect that the first fool we meet in Black, White, and Red all over will be a racist. Now, this is on, however, level one. When you deal with Captain Braxton Beauregard Bragg of the Littleburg Police Department, you're dealing with a fool on a higher level. Now, how did he end up with this name? Where did I come up with this? Well, I wanted it to come out BBB, and we may have time to go into the epilogue at some point and find out why that is. But I wanted to go call him, that was two Confederate generals combined. Braxton Bragg, who's a little bit less known. He was in the Western Theater. He was not very successful. Even Southern accounts seem to kind of push him into the background. And of course, PGT Beauregard, who was the victor at Fort Sumter and also is listed as the victor at First Bull Run or First Manassas Junction, depending on what part of the country you're from. However, PGT Beauregard is also known for his imprudent and unwise behavior, feuding with Jefferson Davis, who was the president of the Confederacy, and then making the kind of mistake that cost at least 100,000 men their lives. After ticking off Jefferson Davis, he also managed to tick off Robert E. Lee. That's an unwise and imprudent decision right there. Didn't come out well. I don't have time to tell you the whole story, but you can go from commanding general of the first two major victories to a general doing a general's desk job if you cross both of those men. And that's how he ended the war. How the mighty fell. PGT Beauregard, still mad about something that had happened all the way back in 1847. Let himself become a fool twice. Wasn't just a Confederate and therefore a traitor to his nation and a racist. He stayed mad for too long about something that Lee didn't even do to him. It's just that Lee got promoted twice and he didn't during the Mexican War. And he thought his contribution should have been recognized. And he just let that sit there and fester for 18 years. So I picked his name to put in there for that reason, but also because there is actually a living man who is a Beauregard, who still upholds the good old Confederate flag, and his middle name also is Beauregard. Remember Jefferson Davis? I just mentioned him. I want you to see something. Okay, let's get the share screen together here. I want you to see something. There is a living man with this construction of his name. Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III. We know him as Jeff Sessions, Attorney General. Look here, 84th United States Attorney General. Okay, and I mentioned this, he got this after Charlottesville. This is actually the reason Braxton Beauregard Bragg has his name. For all of you who want to say, well, slavery and Jim Crow, you need to get over it. He was in office until when? This man was making decisions for you and me through 2018. And his decisions are still on the books because Bill Barr did not reverse them. I'm going to give you three. Jefferson Beauregard Sessions is the one who removed federal oversight from police brutality cases. Ask the family of George Floyd whether or not that's important. And many others since his time in office in 2017. The Justice Department doesn't get involved in these cases anymore. That's Jefferson Beauregard Sessions. Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III also reportedly is invested in private prisons. But no one seemed to question him when he also restored mandatory minimums for crimes that we know all the way back through the crime bills that Joe Biden helped to write in 86 and 94. In 1986 and 94. We know that those laws were targeted at African American men. We know this because Joe Biden got up on the Senate floor and said that. Jeff Sessions was a senator for a long time. He knew about this as well. Yes, that's what, let's see if I can find that. Yes, he was in office. He was a senator until from 1997 to 2017. So he certainly knew about the impact of those laws and who they were targeted at. Understand that the 13th Amendment abolishes slavery throughout all U.S. territories except for felony imprisonment. So Joe Biden gives us a body of law, and Bill Clinton signs this body of law. Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton signed off on this body of law between 1986 and 1984, knowing that what this was going to do essentially is put black men back in slavery. Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III is one of the very few men who actually, 150 years after the fact, has been able to carry out Confederate policy. Because no matter what anybody tells you about the Civil War, the reason for the Civil War was actually put forth by the vice president in his cornerstone speech. You can look this up. The cornerstone of the Confederacy was to ensure the perpetual servitude of the African in America. Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III is one of the very few living men in power to illustrate that this kind of policy and this kind of desire for African Americans is still not only in force, but is being enforced by living men. Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III is not dead. He just left office not even a full 2 years ago and 6 months. Or 5 months, because it's April, not May. Turn that around in your mind for a second. For all of you that think this is all part of the past, 2018 is not, November 2018 is not even 3 years away yet. Men of this mindset still live and are in position of power in the United States of America. We will get over it when it stops. Jeff Sessions' laws and his changes to the law have not been reversed. However, Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III is still a step above Braxton Beauregard Bragg because Jeff Sessions, like certain of his Confederate forebears, has a piece of a conscience. Just a little bit, because when he got taken to task about the third thing, he is responsible for the draconian changes in policy that led to more kids in cages than were there under Barack Obama. And it leaked out that he had put down that the reason they wanted to make this draconian change is basically to terrorize all of Mexico, Central and South America, and to make sure they stayed home and didn't come here. That leaked out. Jeff Sessions is a well-known vocal Christian. He's a Christian conservative of the old Confederate stamp. And when held to account by Christian people, basically his world was rocked. He actually gave an interview, I believe it was 60 Minutes, and I noticed something I never thought I'd see in a man of this type. He was deeply hurt, and he even said this was very painful. I didn't know it would be perceived this way. And then he attempted to justify it, which was a mess, but at the same time, it told me something about him. Jeff Sessions at least understands that he is not the final authority, even for his own life completely, that he has to appeal to something outside of himself. It is not the final law. I think this is ultimately why Donald Trump and he could not get along in the end, because Donald Trump wants to be the final law and a man like Jeff Sessions was never going to go for it. This is also why Jefferson Davis could not always get his way. He did not want to surrender, but he left it in the hands of Robert E. Lee, who had a higher set of standards and wrote Jefferson Davis, said, yes, I basically know I disobeyed your orders, but the opposite side would have been starvation and slaughter. Not going to do it. So he surrendered. This happens occasionally. Jefferson Beauregard Sessions is a cut above Braxton Beauregard Bragg. And I'm going to show you why, whereas Jeff Sessions has also been told, black people that know him talk about he can't be a racist, he's such a delightful person. He also knows how to treat you in public, which is, Southern gentlemen are very good at this. That doesn't mean you're not a racist. It means you know how to act in public. But here's the deal. Policy is what matters. Racism is spelled Policy. Credit to Shantae Charles for pointing that out. Spell policy. Be that as it may, Braxton Beauregard Bragg is a long step down. And in reading this one little passage about him, I will be able to demonstrate that for you very easily. Remember, his partial namesake at least understands there's a standard. There's a difference between a man who understands there's a higher standard and a man who's just going to do what he can get away with without any regard for that. There's a difference between those two things. Jeff Sessions is the evil genius. You have to kind of look at a man and think, you managed to resurrect Confederate policy 150 years after it was defeated. That takes some doing. Jeff Sessions, we talk a lot about Donald Trump. No, Jefferson Beauregard Sessions III got the work done. Braxton Beauregard Bragg, maybe not so much. This is from chapter 2. I've actually read it before in a pure non-theme reading. So for some of you that were listening then, it will be familiar from the fall readings. And for others of you that have read the book, you've probably gone over this part already. But I want to look at it from our themed perspective this month, which is about the foolishness of certain characters. Braxton Beauregard Bragg is first. He's not the last, but he is a unique case. Now, in chapter 2, Captain Hamilton, Hiramwood Hamilton, is our lead character from Tinyville, Virginia, which is right next door to Littleburg, where Captain Bragg is the captain. And he invites all his fellow police officers to dinner. He just paid for it out of his own pocket because they have just gotten a demand from the black newspaper, the New One, the first to survive in Lofton County a week, has sent them a demand that they turn over records of police brutality, and it is a federal law. You can use this law and look it up, the Freedom of Information Act. If a police department's not in active investigations, they have to turn over those records. It's a federal law. I don't think Jeff Sessions got to it. You have to check that out. But there's publicly funded organizations and 501c3s records can be snatched and open to any member of the public who files a federal law. There are about 9 exceptions, but if there's not open investigations, this is an exception. So what the newspaper does, the Lofton County Free Voice, asks for 10 years of past records looking for evidence of police brutality. And for whatever reason, Hiramwood Hamilton, he just came home from being 23 years in the military. So what happened was the police captain who was there when he was a child was still there, but then got in a car accident. And so just as he was coming out of service, he comes home and the position's open. His turret, come to find out, way down the road, it's actually not in this book, it'll be in a sequel. His father was a councilman here. So they know he's reliable. So they offer him the job and he becomes the new police captain. He gets this demand He knows everybody else got it on the same day. And so he decides, okay, let me spend some money and take people to dinner and let them get their things off their chest because I need to find out where I am on this because it's a surprise to him. It's a learning experience for Captain Hamilton. He didn't know this existed. And it's also, he grew up with these guys though. So he knows them and he knows kind of how they think. So it's like, let me go give them a chance to get something off their chest. And then we will kind of work out what we're going to do together. And let me find out what they are because this could be trouble. And he's right. So they come along, and this is where we meet Captain Bragg for the first time. And so here we go. I'm going to start here, not quite in the middle of it, but somewhere here. They've spent some time discussing all the different things that are going on, and then finally they come to the point. Now, all we have to figure out is what we're going to do about the paper, an officer said, and that's the Lofton County Free Voice that's demanding these records. Oh, yes, said Captain Hamilton, which is why I called us together. Lieutenant O'Reilly nearly jumped at the eagerness, nay, almost soul hunger, of most of the officers at the table at that thought of the brilliant Captain Hamilton devising a strategy to deal with the paper and the black people behind it in the good old boy style. With the exception of one grim and quiet officer about Captain Hamilton's age, with a strikingly familiar appearance, the rest leaned forward hungrily, as if someone had offered them a nice, juicy, black, burnt end. Have y'all decided what to do with those Freedom of Information requests yet? Captain Hamilton said. The shock, the disgust, the disappointment, all of it was equally palpable as the officers jumped back. Some of them looked stung, as though Captain Hamilton had slapped them in the face. One of them, his face red, spat out, "What do you mean, have y'all decided? I ripped up the one that came to my office and put it in a round file and burned it. Well, who do these news Negroes," that's not what I edited it out in the text, but you can work it out in your own mind, "think they are, demanding our files? Obama ain't in office no more." The table froze up at first, but broad agreement spread over many of the faces as the seconds passed. "I'm inclined to agree in substance with Captain Bragg," said Captain Johnston of Sharpport's police force. "Although the requests are indeed backed by federal law, there's likely not going to be serious enforcement of that law from the present administration. There is no need for these people who have no knowledge of the working of law, its enforcement, and investigative techniques to have all that information they cannot possibly rightly interpret in hand, to bandy about to the press and social media and other sources of needless agitation." Captain Angler was more circumspect. "My son was kind enough to get on the computer and look up a bunch of stuff for me about that when I got my request letter. His research says there are only 9 legitimate reasons to refuse a Freedom of Information Act request. Freedom of Information Act request, my bad. One of them would be active investigations that can be compromised. But unless we reopen 10 years of cases, we don't have a legal leg to stand on in order to refuse. Angler, I would expect that you, of all people—" "I'm 68 years old, Johnston. I lived through the civil rights period. The longer this thing stretches out in the press, the worse all of us in Lofton County are going to look. We answer the request, and we thus show we have nothing to be ashamed of. We bury them in the data they want. They have papers to get out. The storm of old news will fade out and new things happen long before they get through all of that. If we dig in, even if the local courts decide in our favor, that paper will take all the time and agitate. Those who feel they have been mistreated will air their stories to fill the gap, and any attempt on our part to answer the mischaracterization will be met with, well, just release the records and we'll decide for ourselves. By the time we have to give up the records, the damage will be done. Lawmen who have done absolutely nothing wrong will not be safe in Virginia. The anger will be so high, and then they will camp on every detail they find suspicious week after week. 10 years of information. They won't be done for at least 2, tarring and feathering all of us in public and getting that rag read seriously across the country and the world." Lieutenant O'Reilly looked at Captain Hamilton, aghast, but there was nothing reassuring in that grim marble front yet. "Not only that, gentlemen, there's that pesky Innocence Project, holed up as close as the University of Virginia at Charlottesville," said Lieutenant Hill. of Littleburg. You would think the boys could have at least stopped by there if they wanted to do something helpful before that little girl was sadly killed. Miss Heather Heyer, 32 years old. Captain Hamilton interjected softly, killed by one in that lawless mob. Yeah, that girl, said Lieutenant Hill. Anyway, imagine the situation if we draw this thing out and they end up getting the information later and calling on the Innocent Project to look into it. Once that happens, if there are any innocent Negroes that we have inadvertently helped to put back to work for Virginia, and those folks find them, the scandal will go on for years. It will outlast all our careers, except our new boy, O'Reilly here. The new boy's head was spinning. Only the steady presence of Captain Hamilton was holding him steady. Come on, I can't believe you're talking about this, Captain Bragg cried. This state has gone through a lot in the last 158 years not to have to go through this with these people. A deep sigh from the only officer quieter than Captain Hamilton at the table, his dark eyes emanating the sorrow that framed his grim face as thickly as his salt and pepper black hair. And suddenly, Lieutenant O'Reilly realized why his face was so familiar in Virginia. Now, don't you start, Lee, Captain Bragg snapped. Just because my great-great-great-great-grandfather Braxton Bragg messed up a few times, and because your great-great-great-uncle had to sign the whole thing off and surrender in 1865, doesn't mean I need a history lesson from you. I already know what happened. Captain Henry Fitzhugh Lee of Big Loft's police force leaned forward in his chair and gave Captain Bragg a glare so cold that one would have thought it was about February of 1865. Like his cousin Captain Hamilton, Captain Lee was new in Big Loft's police force, and like Captain Hamilton, he knew he had a mess on his hands, very little time to solve it, and no patience for bombast from anyone. His voice was quiet, but as withering as a freezing cold day. Captain Bragg, he said, we've known each other since childhood, so you ought to know by now that I wouldn't even waste my time on you like that at a time like this. Captain Bragg looked as if he had been slapped again. And that's where we'll stop. So, let me tell you about why Braxton Beauregard Bragg is a fool. Above and beyond some of these other officers, because I made this a reasonable conversation. Captain Angler represents an old police officer who does have some legitimate concerns that many police officers have about how cases like this are handled. And the fears and the concerns of these men, some of whom have not been around for this, entire 10 years, I made them reasonable in the respect. Now, none of these people, you've heard the use of the edited use of the N-word of this a couple of times. None of these men have respect for African Americans. Well, at least not the ones who have spoken thus far. Captain Lee is an exception, but this is not his day. Captain Hamilton is an exception, but this is not his day. The rest of them, and Lieutenant O'Reilly is really young and has a younger person's ideal. So those three, that becomes important for the rest of the book. They do have better respect for human beings. But if you start this out, they don't even not sure they're going to answer the request. Let's just keep it 100. Actually, Hamilton has to make up his mind. That's part of the book. Even he's not sure what he's going to do. So all of them have some learning to do. But Captain Bragg, this is the kind of man that has no sense that there's a standard. This is the kind of man who is an overgrown bully who will do whatever he can do to you if there's no one he fears can actually bully him out of it. Because remember, he doesn't feel like law, the federal law. Now, he's a police officer. He's a police captain. He's been there for a while. He doesn't feel like he has to do anything because Barack Obama's not in office. At least Captain Johnston is sitting up there like, yes, it is a law. It's not like to be enforced. At least Captain Johnston acknowledges the law. Captain Bragg does not acknowledge the law. He is a law unto himself. But see, even in this first conversation, Captain Bragg is outmatched considerably. Notice when he shuts up. The last time a man named Beauregard crossed a man named Lee, that didn't come out well. And Captain Lee told him straight up, I've known you since childhood. And you ought to know I'm not going to waste my time with you. And Captain Bragg zips his lip and doesn't have anything to say for a good long time. You notice how Captain Bragg, Captain Lee get a rise out of Captain Bragg. All he had to do was sigh. He's outmatched, but he's picking fights with people who he ought to really know better. But what I want you to understand here is that this man is a fool, not only that he is a racist, but he is a fool because he has no allegiance to a higher standard. He will do what he can get away with without much comprehension in the world that there's a limit to that. Captain Bragg represents what we think of as the everyday racist who will be out riding around and decide to pick on a random person. He represents the kind of man who will bully his way and then end up getting hurt or killed when he finally meets somebody that is not going to do it. But in large groups, they can be extremely dangerous. And if you read the rest of this book, you will discover in large groups, they can be extremely dangerous, but they can still be outmatched. Captain Bragg also doesn't know when to stop. Come to find out later on, he and Captain Lee have known each other since childhood. And like I said, crossing a lead doesn't work well for you. Nope, they've known each other a long time. They've been going back and forth. Well, I mean, not the whole time, but at some point you have to know when to stop. Captain Lee is walking around with the face of Robert E. Lee in Virginia. He can do whatever he wants anytime he wants to do it. Captain Bragg keeps picking at it. Y'all read. He ain't the one. Captain Lee ain't the one for anybody. In fact, the next fool that we're going to talk with, Captain Lee is here, actually. He's one of these characters that if you're a fool and you encounter him, he going to reveal what you are, and then you're going to deal with the consequences. The next one is going to be Captain Lee's own boss will be up next. And that's the different kind of foolishness that we're going to highlight. But Captain Bragg is the average man. This is the kind of man who's sitting up here talking about no one can really tell me what to do. I'm not going to follow any kind of socially distanced mandate. I'm not going to follow any kind of vaccine mandate. I'm not going to stay home. I'm going to do whatever I want to do when I want to do it. And you can't stop me. The kind of people that will hurt other people going into stores for not having a mask on. Captain Bragg takes it to that level. I'll do what I want to do. And if you try to stop me, I'll hurt you or kill you. That's the kind of man Captain Bragg. That's the level of fool that he is. Not understanding that if you want to live in a world of violence like that, you need to be careful that you actually plan to actually have the upper hand. You can't always get away with it. Now, let me back up just a little bit. Provided there is not overwhelming law, people do have a right not to take vaccines. We don't have a mandatory there. But it's not just the attitude that people have a right not to do certain things. It's the attitude that they can do it without worrying about the consequences to anyone else but themselves. That's a problem. But again, as long as you are doing this in such a way, other people can still protect themselves by not being around you. Like I said, Captain Bragg is the kind of person. If anybody's ever seen The Butler, there's a scene in which the butler as a child watches his father killed for just getting the attention of the slave master that's just raped his wife. He got shot in the head for that. And I have to credit T. Hassan Johnson for having mentioned that on his show today. So let me give proper attribution, the Onyx Report. So let me give proper attribution to that. I heard that today from him. So that's the kind of fool you have for Captain Bragg. They want to do what they want to do without consequences. If there's no one over them that they are terrified of, they will do whatever they can. And if you dare to cross them, I don't know, if you should happen to send a Freedom of Information Act to see how a man like this has run his police department for 10 years, you're going to be in harm's way. To see how that works out, of course, you're going to have to read this book. You're going to see if Captain Bragg gets away with it to the end. Spoiler alert, he won't. But how he gets his comeuppance, you're going to have to read it. All right, we're done for the day. Next time, we're going to deal with Captain Lee's boss, police commissioner of Bickloft, Orton Thomas, who is a very different kind of fool. Same basic racism. But again, knowing when to stop and knowing that you can't, There are certain people that you can fool around with, and there's certain people that you cannot fool around with. But it's a different kind of foolishness, and we'll get into it next time. These kind of men exist in the world as well. I just throw out there, you know, well, maybe not yet, but you probably can fill in a politician or two of your liking. He could be a Democrat or a Republican, but examples exist. All right, we're done for the day. Thank you for your time. Hope you enjoyed. And again, we'll be back. You're going to see this on Wednesday, early morning or early afternoon. And I will be back, Lord willing. We'll have Orton Thomas on. And where does he get his name, by the way? He has a famous name also. And where does he get that? And we'll get into all that on Friday. Enjoy your day. And again, if you'd like signed copies of this book, you'll just drop a comment on Facebook. If you see this in April and probably even the first week of May, drop a comment on Facebook. And if you want a electronic copy, I'll put a link in there for you. Also, look out for my conversation with H.D. Campbell of the Author's Corner, and also look out for his review coming up April 30th. All right, have a good day now. Bye.